Hello and welcome back. It's the 11th of November 1936, less than a year after Alexander Kerensky's death. Kornilov, Commander-in-Chief of the Russian Armed Forces, was taking control of the apparatus of the state and appointed Boris Savinkov as Prime Minister and voice of the people. Black Mondays hit the German Empire and also hit Russia, although in Russia the effects are dwindling. Stability in the young republic has now been positive for some time due to Kornilov's secret police measures and reduction of the Soviet threat. In the internal military policy, a modernization reform was taken over by Marshal Denikin based on mass assault doctrine. Modernization had hopes of creating a large army and actually having them armed and equipped with rifles, which currently they are not. As far as foreign policy goes, the United States is on the brink of civil war, with General Douglas MacArthur taking full control. The rest of the world is stable momentarily, with France and Britain having new elections and the German Empire still recovering from Black Monday. And, as previously spoken, the Civil War just occurred. MacArthur, it seemed, had no chance, with 3 separate states taking over, and Canada establishing New England as a separate entity. Research in the Russian state was going well. A new plane, the I-28, was finished research, and although there was not enough factories put in production, they had high hopes. As it was 1936, engineering decided to focus on concentrated industry and improved machine tools to improve production and to get the rifle speed up to space. Everything was going well, it seemed. The new Russian Republic survived Kerensky's death, and all was well. The same could not be said for the Philippines or the United States. At least in the Philippines, democracy had prevailed. With army modernization beginning its century, they kept on continuing, now focusing on infantry weapons and support artillery. The ultimate goal of the modernization was to standardize infantry equipment and further modernize the weapons and support artillery, and bring everything back to speed at the other republics and nations at the time. With world tension increasing, Kornilov decided it was time to bring the civilian economy into early mobilization. Although this wouldn't do too much, it would help the production and increase in new factories, both military and civilian. Kornilov had high hopes for the Russian Republic, if it could be called that. Savinkov, however, had different plans. The left, after being disillusioned after Kornilov's control, reformed under the Novi Bolsheviki bloc, or New Bolsheviks. These syndicalists were going to push stability in the Russian Republic lower. We should keep an eye on this, Kornilov was quoted as saying. He, however, was busy. His health was failing, and there was none sure he would survive. Savinkov was ready for this moment. He had been on the sidelines, merely being the Prime Minister, like Kornilov was head of state, but now it's just time to take over. At least, that's what he thought. In the meantime, the Brest-Litovsk austerity measures were now over, as Germany had collected all of its payments. With this, Russia can now further extend all of its focus on its own internal development. The United States, Washington D.C. fell to syndicalist militias. It seemed Jack Reed and his band of communists were ready to take over. MacArthur was unable to hold Virginia, and New England, being independent, was situating its own in the Entente. And now, with foreign developments being grim, Kornilov was glad that the Russian Republic was together and staying that way, and although there was a Soviet threat, it seemed the Civil War would not come up again. As army modernization continued, and infantry equipment was beginning to be standardized. This was done in hopes that rifles could be mass-produced and actually equipped to the Russian army, as the Russian armed forces was severely lacking in equipment, enough to where new divisions could not even be trained. Fortunately, the Russian Republic had no enemies. But this was about to change, and Kornilov failing from his health, finally died. Savikanov took this opportunity and took control. Held a fake referendum to establish if he should be leader. 90%, quote unquote, voted yes. Savikanov is now in power. The great helmsman of the Russian nation is dead. The National Populist Party was now in charge. The Russian Republic, even though it was no longer a republic, was now the Russian state, led by a fervent national populist whose intent was to take control of what was taken from him and his empire many years ago in the First Weltkrieg. Things were changing. With Kornilov's death, people no longer expected a new Tsar. They expected a brutal dictator. Kornilov's old ministers, however, were still influential, and Savikanov did his best to prevent this from becoming too prevalent. With Savikanov being in charge, new things are going to happen. With the modernization of being standardized, Savikanov had more opportunities for development rather than the military. Meanwhile in Spain, a new Spanish election resulted in peace and no civil war. All was well in Spain, it seemed. No civil war, just like Russia. Unlike the United States, however, where civil war was still broiling, with MacArthur unable to keep control of his capital, only controlling the Midwest and Texas. But all was well in Russia. Stability was reigning, supposedly, but Savikanov was ready to make his new order. And now, Savikanov was ready, not just for Russia, but for the world. His foreign policy was focused on expansionism, taking over Caucasus, Turkestan, Alish Orza, and former Ukraine. "Let's show the world our might," Savikanov was quoted as saying on the 12th of April. Now was the time. Once the infantry equipment was standardized, Savikanov could focus from civilian ventures or militaristic, both in the industrial scene and in foreign policy. All Russian nation. Crimea, Russia, smaller Russia, White Russia, lands, all lands, our people. They are waiting for us. The Russians must be united. We are the phoenix that was destroyed by the German aggressors, but was reborn from the ashes. And the Russians will help Russians. The Vost quoted one day in a speech, "One nation, one country, one Russia." And now, even though Savikanov had full control, workers' demonstrations were still common, and this did not help the stability of the nation, which was still reeling over the death of Kornilov. But new things were coming, Savikanov promised. Machine tools were introduced, newer ones at least, to help the industrial scene. Focus was then put on construction to increase new factories, which was fitting the military. And now, Savikanov had two options. He could focus on finishing the modernization of the military, or something different. Consolidating his power. Naturally, he chose to consolidate his power, and to be officially made the new Vost of the Republic. This, he thought, would finally remove the Soviet threat and get stability back in control. The Second International, meanwhile, was underway in France and England. Savikanov officially held a mass for the motherland several days after, to show his solidarity against syndicalism. This world was not a good place, he thought. He needed more unity for all Russians. The workers, however, did not believe this and continue to demonstrate. And now the Vost official. Russia needs a strong state or a strong people, or so Savikanov thought. He continued down this path and chose to centralize the apparatus of power. The state of affairs of the Russian state requires a full-scale reorganization of public power. The corrupt and independent administration operated before shall now obey only the Vozd. Severkanov himself. Russia was ready to go from being a puppet to being a world leader. Severkanov addressed the nation in his radio address, announced that the Russian people, driven by the desire to defend their own country from external and internal enemies, will now deal with corruption inside the state apparatus, conduct land reforms, improve labor legislation, and provide further recovery of the state. It seems that the order has finally returned to the country. Severkanov was ready and willing. Stability was indeed increasing, as he promised. Directive number 1. With the merge of the offices of President and Prime Minister, Severkanov continued to solidify his grip of the Russian state by penning Directive number 1. Amongst other things, the directive dismissed the Duma whilst outlawing all political parties besides Severkanov's own National Populist Party. Furthermore, the directive raised combat squads as a state organization and a full-blown branch of government. It seems the secret police no longer secret. With the Senate gone, Severkanov had full power. Nothing was in his way, or so he thought. As part of his consolidation of power, he aimed to increase stability in the Russian state, thus proving Russian dominance at home and abroad, as his popularity soon increased after the increase in stability. All was well for Severkanov. All was well. Now, on the research front, the Russians completed their concentrated industry. Now focused on newer models of artillery to further compete with European powers. And politically, the Senate, the corrupt apparatus of the state, was abandoned and reformed to be more restricted and for Severkanov to have more power over it. The new Senate will represent the new Russia, Severkanov was quoted as saying. And with political stipulation finally in place, Black Monday was going to be fixed, and intensive reforms aimed at restoring the pre-crisis national power were completed, thus making Russia a little better than it was before the crisis. And then again, another Balkan war. With Serbia declaring war on Bulgaria, along with Greece and Romania joining in the Belgrade Pact. A pact made against the resurgent Bulgaria took many lands in the First Weltkrieg, which remained to be seen whether Tsar Boris III held on. As far as the Russians were concerned, though, it was of no use. Furthermore, the Russians focused on improving their infantry equipment in order to increase the compatibility of their military, as Severkanov had great plans. And now for a more closer war on the frontier. Alish Orta and the Turkestan Khanate began the fight. And just as this was happening, Severkanov made a speech glorifying the unity of Russia and its loyal minorities. He was going to bring them together once again. With his newfound political power, Severkanov aimed to finally replace all impurities that remained, including the paternal autocrat minister Alexei Putilov. He was a smart man, bank president. He could construct at 5 speeds with economic projects, and he was good at efficiency, but he had to be replaced with a more national populist. Nikolai V. Istrelov, an administrative genius, was selected for the job, and soon replaced him. And now the full cabinet belonged to the National Populist Party. Severkanov's consolidation of power was complete. Now, the VDNKH, the Exposition of Achievements of the National Economy, is one of the most ambitious projects of the new government. Forgotten and unremarkable wasteland in the northeast suburbs of Moscow was turned into ideal models of the new Russia. Severkanov was proud. He declaimed, "This is how we will rebuild Russia." With this complete, centralized apparatus of power was put into Severkanov's hands. Now he focused on new things, such as the Unamara, focusing on putting all Russians inside the military and making a new militarized society. This would have the effect of recruiting a base national recruitable population and to increase the national union of Russia, as they were all one and together in the military. Furthermore, Lebedev held a mass for the motherland in the capital. All members of the family, including the Romanovs and the Patriarch, took part. For the new Russia, he proclaimed. With Sevkenov's focus on the army now, he decided to appoint a new chief of the army. He figured he needed someone who could take Russia and move it forward instead of being on the defense. And so he chose Ivan P. Romanovsky, the chief proponent of the decisive battle. He promised to bring the divisions and make them attack, if you will. And now the Balkan War was over. It was quick, with Greece, Serbia, and Romania trampling Tsar Boris III. The territory that was lost in the First Weltkrieg was quickly regained, with Serbia gaining the south, Greece gained the north, and Romania getting a small portion. In other terms, artillery was done, and the new Russian state decided to focus even more so on more infantry equipment. You know, it was slightly ahead of its time. They wanted it anyway, to be ahead of the game, if you will. The consolidation of power was complete, or close to being complete at least. And the military needed more power too, for syndicalism was spreading, especially in the country of Burma. And as soon as it spread, however, it opted to reunite with the commune in India. And thanks to his new popular policies, one of our ministers, the newly appointed economic minister in fact, Nikolai V. Osushkov, increased the popularity of the national populists. They are popular, hence the name populists. So with the cost of the political power, Sevkenov pushed the national populists ahead. And in the Commune of India, a new leader was elected, one who represented the syndicalists, who moved away from the radical socialists and the totalists that were existing in the country. On the research front, improved infantry equipment was researched and put into place by the Russian government. Now they focused on trucks to mobilize and motorize the Russian military. Politically, the Unamira was complete. And now the new schools which were taking children and putting them into the military were now all across the country. Sevkenov focused on a more political and propaganda front, establishing a state cinema industry, which are going to be put in the capital, Moscow, major cities, small cities, all over the country. And a minister supports his ideology. A minister, a national populist minister, decided to go out of the way and support his new ideology. Even though the government approved of it, it was still considered out of line, but Sevkenov allowed it. He figured that more popularity was worth it, even if his ministers disobeyed his orders. All was well. It seems the people of Russia, at least half of them, were accepting this new rule with some optimism, and hoped that Russia would go in advance beyond what it once was. Economically, they'd improve. The liberals in the government criticized the clergy, as the new government did indeed have many of the clergy in it. Let them shout, was Sevkenov's answer. He did not want to have anything to do with liberals. And the new Ukrainian government, an authoritarian democrat government, sought to reconstruct their economy by establishing a free trade area between Russia and Ukraine. Sevkenov agreed and launched the project, increasing public opinion between the two countries. Secretly, Sevkenov wanted nothing to do with Ukraine, at least independent Ukraine. Instead, he wanted to control it and take it away from Middle Europa. But that was much later. Now, Sevkenov needed to consolidate his power. This was mostly complete, as we saw with increasing the state cinema industry, and the Unamara, but it was not yet finished. Other parts of the world, the Ottoman Empire were dealing with a revolt, a small revolt in Armenia. Nothing they couldn't take care of, they thought. But it was a sign of even more instability in the Sigma of Sigma of Europe. It remains to be seen what will happen. The Ottoman Empire, the days are numbered. Now, as far as military concerned, things were going well. Factories were producing much equipment, and in the beginning, in 1936, they were missing 80,000 units, but now they're only missing 40,000, completely halved. They figured in 440 days they would have enough rifles for every man. And new events in the Far East. Admiral Kolchak, leader of the Transylvania puppet state, was killed. With his death, our society became a bit more pacified, Savkinov said, even though the government was still independent and still under Japanese control. But that did not concern, for Kolchak was quite the man, a thorn in the side of the Russian government. And now, the state cinema industries were complete, and the nation felt unified around the Savkinov government. And now, Savkinov was almost done with his consolidation. He planned to announce his new Russia, a new power that will be back to its former glory, or so he said. And after this internal development, he planned to focus on foreign policy, something based on expansionism. Whether he'd go for the Middle East or the Caucasus first was soon to be decided. In the West, the CSA and the Syndicated Control had taken over Denver. This proved that the United States did not have what it takes to win, and now it remains the competition between the CSA and the American Union States on issue long. Although most experts agree the syndicates would win due to their manpower industry advantage. And back in Russia, focus was taken away from new trucks, now put into something else. Doctrine, someone asked? Savkinov agreed, and pocket defense doctrine, pioneered by Denikin himself, was put into place, along with a mass for the motherland, to further increase solidarity. Things were looking low for Russia. Field Marshal Verret, a proud supporter of the new government, also died there. It was not quite good, but Savkinov had plenty of supporters and was not worried. And most importantly, with the Unamera, 2% extra recruitable population was added to the manpower pool, which was over 2 million. Very convenient, and Russia did not even need to go on conscription. They could stick to volunteers for this. Very convenient indeed. On the main front, Savkinov decided he needed more military members in his high command. Focused on someone more maneuverable. Volkovsky was chosen, but he was rather too left-leaning for Savkinov, so was denied. Instead, he focused on Mikhail Josovsky, who is more right-leaning. Focusing on organization and recovery rate, he was a psychologist in nature. Savkinov liked him, and so he chose him. The military was proud and happy. With more guns and more elites, they were confident in their ability to reunite Russia, but that time was not yet here. Later, they thought. And with new guns and advanced technologies, they had all the confidence they needed. All they needed was just those guns in their hands. And Japan announced their ambitions, which was troubling for Russia, considering the growing Vladivostok state was under their control. A concern, but Russia was focused on Germany, and honestly could not care for Japan, at least now. The research department, electronic mechanical engineering, was chosen. It was decided this would be the future. And for now, this is where Russia is.